Hi, everybody. This is Lowell, and I'm here to talk about music theory a little bit more with you. And we've been talking about rhythm and some basic general concepts of rhythm. Now, I want to just real simply take you through rhythmic notation, classical music notation. And, there's a lot of music that people listen to, and these days on the radio or YouTube or whatever. But the way that people think of rhythm is not necessarily as organized as classical music portrays it, and a lot of pop rhythm has a different feel to it than classical music rhythm does. And so the way that I can explain this, it's not hard to notate pop music at all. It's just the reason that it feels different is because of the emphasis on certain beats. And I've talked to several people who are kind of anti-music reading. They say, well, I don't really want to get into learning all that stuff because it's going to inhibit me or whatever. I've found it very helpful to be able to notate rhythms, and I've worked with pop music for most of my career actually, in putting it into notation. The thing that basically is important to understand in terms of the difference between classical music rhythm and pop music rhythm is this concept that is probably most widely known as swing. And there's various aspects of emphasis of beats, particularly if you have a beat that is equal, two notes that are equal. In classical music, the notes are equally spaced, whereas in a lot of pop music, you end up having a lengthening of the first note and a shortening of the second note. And so instead of two equally spaced notes that are of equal duration, you have a longer note. The first note is a little bit longer and the second note is a little bit shorter. And so instead of da, 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 you end up having da, 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 da. So long, short, long in various ways. And so you can have that in larger, slower types of groupings, or smaller, quicker types of groupings. And so the quicker types of groupings can sound like da 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 da, or the longer can be more like jazz, da 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 da. But it can still be notated with standard notation. You just at the beginning of the piece, you just say this is the 16th note is swung, or the 8th note is swung. And so there's different terminologies for that, but I'm just using the one word swing to show that subject. Nevertheless, all music can be notated, and I find it very helpful to be able to write out rhythmic notation. So this is a general teaching on music notation. It's very simplistic, and I'm not going to go into great depth, but just so that a general concept of music theory, so that you understand how music notation works. For those of you who haven't really spent much time with music notation, I'm going to endeavor to give you kind of an overview of it. So we talked before about the divisions, basically, of one area of time. And so an area of time is designated as a whole block of time. And so I talked about a pie at Thanksgiving dinner being divided. And so here's your pie, and you're going to divide that pie in half so that you have two pieces and then four pieces. And so that how that relates to rhythm is you start out with what they call a whole note. And so the whole note is just this circle. And then a half note, the kind of the nomenclature, or the way that we write half notes is by putting a stem and that stem can go up or down on the half note. And then we have quarters of the pi, and so we're dividing that whole note into quarters. And so the quarter note is a filled in black note with a stem. And then we're dividing that pi into eighths. And so we have a filled in black note with a stem with a flag. And so that flag represents the beginning of the next set of divisions of music notation. And so if we divide these pieces of pi into eighths, or sixteenths rather, we're cutting each one of those eighths in half. So now we have 16 pieces. So we have an eighth note is a filled in circle with two flags. And so this way of notating becomes the foundation of how we continue to show those further divisions. We just keep adding flags. And so if I divide each one of those 16s in half, then we end up getting 32. And so we have 32nd notes. So we just add, now we have 3 flags. So if you start grouping these together, then you can group them together with, instead of flags, you can group them together as bars. And so you can group eighth notes together with bars like that, with 1 bar at the top. Or you can have, multiple groups barred together. Oops. And then same thing with 16th notes, but you're going to add, with 16ths, you're going to add, your 2 bars at the top to represent the 2 flags. And 32nd notes, you're going to add, a 3rd bar to represent the 3rd flag. And so on and on it goes. And there's no end to how much you can divide it. You can go, 64th notes, 128th notes. And notice that the smaller the division does not necessarily mean that it's faster. It is going to be faster than the whole note, but let's say that the whole note is, in one instance, the whole note is 60 equals, one whole note equals 60 beats per minute. And so that's going to be different, a different tempo or a different speed than if the quarter note equals 60 beats per minute. So this whole system doesn't have anything to do with speed, but rather the ratio between the notes. This is a longer duration, and this is a shorter duration. But this can be, this whole system can either be fast or slow. So it's just a matter of ratio and relationship of speed inside of the tempo that you set. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about tempo and, or actually meter, and what meter looks like. Meter is basically explained by a system that looks like a fraction. And so we have the top number, we call this a time signature that's at the beginning of a piece. And so the most common time signature is what we call 4/4. And so the top number talks about, how many beats. And then the bottom number talks about of what kind. And so we talked about a minute ago the kind of notes that we have. We have whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, sixteenths, etc. And so that's what this bottom number means, is how many notes are we talking, or what kind of notes are we talking about. And so here, if we have the number 4, then we're talking about quarter notes, and this is per measure. And so a measure is a unit of time that shows beats. And so this is basically, when I say a beat, we're talking about a pulsation. And so if we have 4 quarter notes inside of a measure, then that means we have 4 beats inside of the measure. And so, and the beat is the quarter note. And so, in other words, if we have 4 quarter notes inside of a measure, then, and a measure is designated by this vertical line. And so, and let's say that the quarter note equals 60 beats per minute. And so if the quarter note equals 60 beats per minute, then how this is going to be performed is da, 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 da. And that's what happens inside of the measure. And so I can have any other rhythmic combination happening inside of that time signature. You know, I might have 2/8 and a quarter, and then 4/16. So 4/16 fit inside of a quarter note, and then another 2/8 to finish out with that measure. So I could fit this other rhythm inside of this same meter of 4/4. So I can go ta 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 ta, or any combination. So there are many different kinds of time signatures. And the time signature that's most common is 4/4, and we also call that common time. And so if you see a C at the beginning of a piece of music, that stands for common time or 4/4. But you can have 3/4. You can have 6/8. These are kind of standard common ones. You can have 12/8. So sometimes when a composer wants to show inside of one measure a combination, then they will do what they call compound meters. And so you could go 3 + 4 over 8. And so that means we have 3/8 plus 4/8. And so you're going to have basically, you would beam these 3/8 together and then 4/8 are beamed together. And so that's your measure. And so it's basically, it's the same thing as writing 7/8, but they wanted to make sure that you understood that the first 3 are grouped together and then the last 4 are grouped together. And that's how you perform it as a musician. You would go da 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 da. Most people would be familiar with the Mission Impossible theme. Bum, 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 bum. So it's that's a 5/8 pattern, and so these kind of things can be played with. And I was talking a minute ago about swing and how swing is notated. In pop music or in jazz, you would normally be in 4/4. And, you know, you have these, let's say we have 8 eighth notes in that 4/4 measure. And so you would write swing at the beginning. And the way swing actually is performed is that even though these eighth notes look like they're all the same length, and in classical music you would perform them da 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 as one measure. But in swing, what you're going to do is you're going to make the first note longer and the second note shorter. And so it's going to be da 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 da. And so if you write swing at the top at the beginning, then you're going to let the player know that they're going to lengthen the first note and shorten the second note. Now, how much length you give to the first note and how little length you give to the second note, that's where it gets into stylistic differences. And if you look at a music notation program, most of them when you create music on a digital audio workstation, they will allow you to determine how much swing you put, what percentage of swing you put into, you tell the computer to put into the piece that you're working on. And so in terms of notation, I guess what I wanted to let you know, these are just dots on the page. And, I can go into a whole another topic or another talk about the value of why it's important to have notation as a musician. And, just briefly, it's because of organization in rehearsal and organization in performance. And, it's like, how would you build a house without a blueprint? It's like, well, building a house, has nothing to do with reading a piece of paper. I'm using my hands, I'm using, my hammer, my saw, my, tools. That has nothing to do with having to look at a piece of paper. It's like, well, okay, same with music. You're dealing with sound, you're dealing with playing your instrument, physically, and that has nothing to do with looking at a piece of paper. But, I promise you, if a builder, if a contractor didn't have a blueprint to go off of, that building is going to be whack. And most musicians can only build very simplistic structures if they don't understand how to read the blueprint. And so you can build some very, very complex structures with learning how to read music and learning how to use a blueprint. But nevertheless, the important thing that I'm trying to share here is that these are just dots on the page, and they don't have meaning other than what is in your imagination and what you understand them to mean. And so when we call these notes, notes, have you ever written yourself a note to go to the store, to the grocery store to pick up bananas? And so you don't write on that, when you're writing yourself a note to go to the store to do this, you don't write yourself a book, and you say, okay, I'm going to drive my car to Walmart and park in aisle 7, and then go into the north side of the building and turn left and go get bananas. You just write on the note, you write bananas. You know that you're going to do all those other things, but you just need to remember that you're going to get bananas. So the note to yourself is not the full story. It's just jogging your memory enough to allow you to know what should be happening. And so the same thing in music notation. It's not the whole story. It's not going to tell you, how many times to vibrate that note, or exactly how loud you're going to play that note in this context. It's to jog your memory and to give a sense of cohesion. And so it's a blueprint, essentially, of what you're going to be using to produce the music. And so in terms of, how exactly you're going to write a swing, that's not the point. The point is to give the group or the team of people that are working together a memory of the general gist of what the group is going to be producing and performing, and to keep everyone together and to give everybody a sense of the entire blueprint of what's being created. So everybody knows their part. Everybody knows what their role is. When you're building a building, you have you have an electrician, you have a person who's doing the plumbing, you have a person who's doing the insulation, you have a person who's doing the red iron, the foundation. Each part has, each industry has their own part to play. And similarly with a musical score, the conductor or the general contractor looks over the entire project to make sure everything's happening at the right time in the right way. But each person has their own unique individual part. And so when you have a score that's well organized and you have people that can read music, then it all fits together nicely. And I've found, and the more people that you involve, the more organization you have to have. And so it's very easy to produce music when you're sitting down by yourself on the piano and you just make up anything you want to. But when you start adding more and more people, that requires greater organization. And so that's the value of having a blueprint or a musical score to work from. So this is just a general explanation of rhythm, and hopefully this helps you.